Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Laser i3 PLC Leaders webinar series. This is the fifth of 6 planned webinars in the series. I'm Kyle Demers Johnson with the Laser i3 project at the Smithsonian Science Education Center. I will be moderating tonight's webinar along with my coworker Kayla Mallon. Tonight's webinar is going to be different from any of the previous ones, and we'll get more into that in a moment. The SSEC and the Laser i3 team would like to thank the U.S. Department of Education and our match funders for supporting the Laser i3 project and making this webinar possible. Neither the U.S. Department of Education nor our private sector funders are responsible for the content of this webinar. I'm going to quickly go over some logistics for this webinar. All participants will remain muted throughout the webinar with some exceptions. Again, we'll get into that in a moment. The GoToWebinar software tracks your attendance and participation. And finally, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our website. Also, if you have questions, you can email us, email Allison at colletona@si.edu, or again, use the questions feature in the sidebar. So the goal of this webinar is to collaborate and learn from one another with a focus on your experiences with various challenges, successes, lessons learned, and best practices you may have developed. We will go over the survey feedback that you submitted in that survey I sent out last week. We will go over common challenge areas and then present those alongside successful strategies to work through these challenges. We will solicit group input following discussion on each of those areas, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end as time will allow. So I'm sure you're familiar with this at this point, but the sidebar looks something like this on your screen, and that's how you submit questions to us. We will answer them either immediately or at the end. So to quickly look at the survey results, we got 19 responses submitted as of when I pulled together the feedback yesterday morning. The first question was, what has been your greatest challenge this year in your PLC? It did allow multiple selections, and the responses in quotation marks were entered in the other category. So you can see most challenges were surrounding attendance, recruitment, and then some as well with meeting the PLC's stated goals. Other questions weren't as easily summarized, but did provide really great feedback, which directly fed into the rest of this webinar. So what will be a little different about this webinar is that we will be soliciting verbal contributions from all of you. This will be at the end of each section of the webinar. In other words, we'll present one of the common challenges, some methods of responding to it, ask for contributions from you, and then move on to the next challenge. When prompted, please raise your hand using this feature of the GoToWebinar software. It's a feature we haven't directed you to use before, so we included an image here of what that button looks like. Should you be called on after raising your hand, we'll mention you by name and unmute you. Please keep your input to 1 or 2 minutes so others have the opportunity to contribute. And I'm going to hand the ball over to Kayla.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. So as Kyle already mentioned, and as you all already know because you responded to it, we sent out a survey. We thought at this point in the year it would be a good idea to kind of talk through some of the challenges that everyone's been experiencing with the PLC, and then also kind of highlight some of the successes. And what we kind of found was a lot of PLC leaders, as you've already seen from Kyle's kind of summary, identified the same challenges. But something else that we kind of found that was interesting was that some PLC leaders had some successes in those areas that others had challenges. So what we were hoping to do with this webinar is go through some of the common challenges that people experienced and then hear from some of the PLC leaders in the other regions about their successes in those areas and strategies that they use. Some of them more practical, some of them are a little bit more strategic. And also, at the end of each of these, there's going to be a prompt for you to go ahead and raise your hand. And we really want this to be an interactive webinar. I know that the ones in the past have been a little bit more just sit and listen, but we want this to be a lot more interactive. We want to hear from you and what your experiences have been. So with that, go to, oops. Okay, so the first challenge that everyone, I don't think one person did not check this, was regular attendance at PLC meetings. And what we're hearing is teachers are overworked, overcommitted. So getting people to attend regularly, maybe we could get them in the door in the beginning, but then it was an issue to get them to attend every week. So some of the suggestions that we kind of pulled from the successes that we read through in the success portion of the survey, sorry, I'm going to make sure we can hear from Elizabeth, is one thing was kind of a value add. So making sure that something that you're doing in the PLC is tangible and something that teachers can take away and will be able to use in their classroom. So Elizabeth, I'm going to unmute you and I hope we can hear you. Go ahead. Okay, so you going to try again? Okay, so can't hear from Elizabeth right now. Maybe, Elizabeth, if we hear from you later, you can go ahead and raise your hand or something, and we'll be able to hear from you. But I can kind of talk through what Elizabeth's group did, and they developed as a group some assessments for now. Oh, there you are. Elizabeth, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's parent conference night. We're having technical difficulties. I had to switch computers. So I've kind of just been following along but not been able to talk or listen. Teachers are always constantly trying to look for, like, instead of reinventing the wheel, coming together and collaborating and creating things that are already created. So everyone knows that two heads think better than one. So we have the incentive of being able to come after school and sit down and talk about these science kits and talk about our third grade content standards and how to incorporate literacy with science and have something, there for them to use and to differentiate based on their classroom if they need to change it. If one child's like a struggling reader, maybe they have the assessment readily available where they can, change it to meet the needs of their students. So the teachers are loving being able, by the end of our PLC, our fifth meeting is on Tuesday. By the end, we'll have an assessment created for every single article that's in the readers that come with the plant growth and development kit. So, and that's another way where we're incorporating science with our EOG reading and getting them to read passages, and it's just nice to be able to incorporate those with third grade standards.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was great. So what I'm hearing is that developing a tool collaboratively that everyone finds value in has been something that keeps people coming back, and is a really good way to have a shared responsibility within the group and accountability if everybody's contributing. Another kind of pretty similar thing that has kind of helped participation with regular attendance is something that Nikki Dixon talked about, and that was I was having an end goal in mind. So for her PLC, something that has been a success for her is she's really raised awareness about science, the Laser I3 project in her community, and something that she was excited about is this STEM expo that they're going to take part in. So I want to hear from Nikki. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I am not the creator of the STEM Expo. We have a high school teacher. He started the STEM Expo. But for me and my PLC for this year, whenever we have parent conference night or we have the music performances, I set up a table highlighting some of the things that the third graders are doing with the kids. At my site is second and third grade, and unfortunately second grade does not participate. And I used to teach third grade, now I teach second. So with all of that being said, my whole goal for my PLC was to incorporate second grade into the third grade teachers, with the teachers to get them familiar with the kids. So it just so happens that the county has a STEM Expo, and they started it last year. And originally, for my PLC, was just going to have a site at like a little center at my school, highlighting everything that we have done with the kids for the year. But like you said, we're not wanting to reinvent the wheel. I decided to piggyback with the county, and so that's how we are incorporating, letting the community know about what we have been doing with the I3 kids, is to have a STEM Expo.
Thank you, Nikki. So again, kind of having something that, a goal for everybody, shared accountability, something that you can be proud of that you've been a part of at the end. It's been something that I know has been successful for Nikki, so I appreciate that. Kyle, can you move the slide for me, please? Okay, so something that Elizabeth touched on a little bit is the incorporating other subject areas, so collaborating with incorporating literacy, math, with the hands-on science is something that I know everyone has found some value in, because the teachers are already kind of stretched thin and trying to focus on all these different subject areas, especially the tested areas. Something that I know that Gloria Hudson has done is aligned her use of PLC time to align some of the literacy standards with what they're doing in science. So Gloria, if you want, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you want to talk a little bit more about what you guys have done with your PLC, that would be great.
Well, just briefly, I started with a goal of looking at laser from purely a literacy point of view and the resources that were available. And in my best mind, I thought that I could very logically make a transition into the classrooms as a portion of the literacy initiative as science. But I quickly found out that the structure that the district wanted was basically more in the reading side. Not that it could not transition, but the first line of defense was primarily guided reading and just doing a lot of anchor charts to ensure, kind of like the old ELA block where you need to do this first and then bring kids along who were not reading. So my point of view with laser was more simplistic because of things like Kids Discover and some of the expository reading on the upper grade levels. But my comment basically, concern had to do with just making the transition from one to the other. In my mind, it shouldn't matter where you started, whether it was from a science point of view or whether it was from, the traditional literacy point of view. But it did matter because classroom teachers are very busy, as you just indicated, and it's a one-step, two-step. However, now being half year, I was able to go back because I do a lot of interventions in science, so I can make suggestions and use some of the laser data to extend or elaborate, and that's essentially what I've gotten the lower grade teachers to do. And it makes sense because kids enjoy the science kits, and it's just an extension. That's how we started, reading as an extension of what you've just experienced in investigations. So on the upside, I think it's literacy for literacy's sake. It's just very narrowly focused, and my hope for next year is that we'll have a groundswell from the real ELA block that crosses into things like science and math, because literacy is very broad. It's not very narrowly focused as we're trying to get it off the ground. So it's not a slam, it's just a piece of reality.
Thank you, Gloria. That's helpful. So another thing that we came across that PLC leaders were using, kind of more practical incentives, both Julie Brown and Kim Winston, and I also know that Kathy French also did this with her PLC, was that they were able to offer some more practical incentives by working with their school administration. And I know Julie was really successful with that, so I want to go ahead and unmute Julie, and you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, I know for our teachers in North Carolina, we have a cycle where we have to renew our teaching certificates. And in order to do that, you have to have a certain number of continuing education credits. And to earn the continuing education credits, you either have to take a college classes or go to a certain number of professional development courses that are offered wherever you can pick them up. And a lot of times they're either for literacy or for your content area, and you get a certain number of credits for the length of time that you're in those courses. And so if teachers were going to come, because as we've already said, everybody's really overbooked, and if they were going to come to the PLC and spend their time coming to do that, then I just went to the administration and asked. I went to the district office and asked the associate superintendent if there was a way that we could do that. And they asked what we would be discussing, and when I explained to them the types of things that we were going to be talking about, they said that would certainly, that it could certainly apply toward professional development for CEU credits if we would just keep track of the exact amount of time everyone was there. So as long as I could keep up with having everybody to sign in, and we would keep log sheets of the time that people signed in and the amount of time people put into it, that they would have no problem sending that into the state for me. And so we've kept log sheets and turned it in, and they're sending that in so that everybody that attends is getting CEU credits.
Thank you, Julie. That's great that you were able to do that. Second, Kim Winston was able to get some of her PLC participants extra duty pay. So I wanted to go ahead and give Kim the floor to talk about how she went about doing that. Go ahead, Kim, you have the floor.
Okay, I kind of did what Julie did. I went to the principal already with our proposal and our plan in order, so she knew exactly what we were going to do. And we just kind of told her plan for using the Outdoor Nature Center to get teachers more involved in science, and kind of using the Outdoor Nature Center for reading, for science, for literature, for all kinds of stuff. And when we told her that we thought the best could get everyone to participate with was with extra duty pay, she agreed. And we also made her know that it was important to start with the lower grades too, so that way in 5th grade we weren't trying to play catch up at the very end, and she was very supportive of that. So I think having the plan already ready to go makes it a lot easier to get your administration to support you.
Thank you, Kim. So it sounds like with both of these solutions, the key was having a plan ahead of time, knowing what you were already going to be doing, and being able to demonstrate the value to the administration to be able to kind of get these other more practical incentives that I'm sure have been really, really useful in getting participants to come back for meetings. So at this point, this is the part where you go ahead and raise your hand and say, this is something else that I tried, or tried and didn't work, or tried and worked, or maybe it's a new idea that you have. But like we kind of talked about in the beginning, the purpose of this webinar is to offer suggestions and learn from one another what has worked. So if you would, anyone have any suggestions, experience, thoughts, questions for the people that already kind of gave what they did, if you want to go ahead and click the raise your hand feature, and then I will unmute you to either ask your question or offer your thoughts. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes. While we wait, I have one question for Gloria, and that is, were you able to develop specific documents during your PLC that kind of showed the tie between the readings that you were doing with science to the standards that you have to follow in the HISD school district?
Well, without having it just available, I went into classrooms and I made, I won't say a chart, but I have a listing of what the program plan was, if you will, from the district point of view, and then I kind of mapped that back into some of what we wanted or were doing in science. And the place where they intersected was not in the lower grades, it was in the upper grades, because they had a need to pull most of the, or some of the, I can't say most of, but some of the standards, some of the readings from the kits, like particularly like ecosystems and land and water. Those are pretty healthy reading selections, and there's a lot of work that could be done there, you know, using some of the kind of test-related strategies, I'll say it that way. And on the lower grades, I'm really just starting to get some, let's say, mileage there where they are more, whereas before they really didn't use the pamphlet books in a meaningful way to foster some of the pieces of the reading program. Those, it could be, you know, parts of a book. It could be, you know, some questioning strategies like what are the pictures saying to you, and then maybe charting it for the lower kids, right? Again, I just don't want to overstate it, but I know we're just at the beginning of it. Because teachers come to me now and talk about what's going on in the books, or ask, you know, what can we do to meet the science portion of the curriculum versus, you know, do two things at one time.
Great. So we have one person that would like to go ahead and offer some things that she found helpful. Laura, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You have the floor. If you're trying to talk and can't, go ahead and type in the chat box that you're speaking, because I don't think we can hear you. So something else that Laura said is she was able to attend a conference that helped her, give her some tools to incorporate social studies and math and reading as well. So that has been helpful with her PLC. Okay, I'm going to give it a couple more seconds to give anyone an opportunity. I'd really like to hear your experiences. That's kind of the purpose. We need to model what we're trying to do in PLCs, which is learn from each other, collaborative learning experience. So, okay, Molly, I'm going to get you to say that out loud. Molly, and you are unmuted. So, Molly Brooks, you are unmuted. I wanted to go ahead and give you an opportunity to say that, what you just typed to me out loud to the group. That's okay. That's okay. Molly's baby is sleeping, so she cannot talk, and I completely understand that. But something that Molly found helpful was that meeting with the teachers one-on-one seems to be helpful to increase participation in the PLC, and that's something that I think anyone could do and would be really helpful to have those conversations with your attendees to get them involved, kind of capitalizing on what you know that they're good at and asking them to contribute it to the group is something that I'm sure has been helpful. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next challenge. So recruitment. This is the second most popular issue that PLC leaders face. And what I heard over and over again, or read over and over again, was that many teachers had a lot of interest during summer PD when we were kind of pitching and really trying to champion the PLC program in the very beginning during summer PD. And then as the school year began, teachers had a lot of things coming at them, as we all know happens in the beginning of the school year. So there were a lot of interested people in the beginning that kind of started to wane with all the different commitments that teachers have to meet. So Gina Gold was going to talk about this, but she had something come up just before the webinar, and she was unable to attend. So if anyone else has strategies that they used to recruit teachers for their PLC, I would really appreciate hearing from that. So while I wait for one of our PLC leaders to go ahead and volunteer to talk about what they did, I will give a brief overview of what it is that Gina did. And what she did is in her school, she went to the curriculum coaches and kind of tapped them to figure out who would be a good fit for her PLC, and was a little bit more strategic about recruiting teachers instead of maybe, just sending out flyers or sending out an email asking anyone who's interested kind of a thing. She kind of was more vetting teachers to make sure it was a good fit for them, and that it would be a valuable PLC for them to join. So I know that that was something she found to be really, really useful for her recruitment in her PLC. So this is now your chance. Raise your hand. We want to hear from you. What is it that you did, Kim? I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Kim. You've got the floor.
Yes.
Yep. Kim, Kim Winston, you raised your hand. I'm unmuting you.
No, I think that was an accident. Sorry. On the phone. Sorry.
That's okay. So anyone else? Things that you did to help with your recruitment, either in the beginning or as you got into your PLC and wanted to recruit more members? Give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I know one person, Julie. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and you have the floor.
One thing that we did when we were trying to get more people to come, because we were trying to meet across a whole district, and we have lots of schools within our district, is we opened up to Google Hangout, and we allowed, or we asked anybody that could not come and meet with us when we could meet to meet with us on Google Hangout, and that helped a lot because many people were able to just already be at home. Our schools, we had some elementary teachers and some middle school teachers, and our middle schools and our elementary schools all got out at different times. And
Muted.
trying to find a time when we could all get together at the same time was difficult, and so when we were recruiting people, that was a big factor. And somebody deciding whether or not they wanted to come. So once everybody figured out, oh, you could already be at home and you didn't have to come back, then they could be at home and meet with us through Google Hangout. I also had a couple of people who thought they could not come because they had a second job that they went to, and one of those people, actually the two people, both of them that had a second job, kind of teamed up, and they would take turns. So one of them comes one time, the other one comes the next, but they both have to come through Google Hangout. And so technology in that aspect helped a lot. We also did, as you were saying, as somebody was just saying they had done, we met with some people on a one-to-one basis, and then those people would go back and meet. So we would recruit one person from a school, and then that person would go back to their school and meet with the other people at the school who could not come to the PLC meeting, since we had such a large geographical area that we were trying to overcome.
Right. So what I'm hearing from you is a lot like what Gina did, which is the kind of more strategic, find one person that's maybe a champion in their school and being able to find other teachers who would be interested through that person. And I know that that's worked in several of the regions or PLCs as well. So I just got a message also from Gloria Hudson saying they solicited assistance from lead teachers on the district literacy team. So again, it sounds like really knowing who you need to talk to find the right fit and the right people to join the PLC has been pretty important for recruitment. Because I know, as a person who's read all the meeting review forms and read the plan at the beginning, we all had a maybe vision of what it was going to look like in the beginning and how many people we were going to have attend. And this doesn't always work out exactly like you want. And also just to keep recruiting as the year goes on, to make sure that your PLC is relevant for everyone participating and more people joining. Okay, so that feeds right into the kind of last challenge that we found through the survey, and that is that people wrote a plan in the very beginning, and then when they got to during the school year, that plan didn't exactly turn out the way that they thought it was going to. And that is something that we kind of thought may happen when we asked people to write out these plans in, the summer. So what I would say, and I think what we've found in the various webinars that we've held and the experts in the field that we've talked to is that's perfectly fine, and the PLC should be relevant and valuable to its members. So shifting your focus of your PLC is encouraged if you think that there's another way that you can go that would be more beneficial to your school, to your students. That's exactly what we want people to do.
Unmuted.
Yeah, and Kayla, if I could piggyback.
So I'm going to go back. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to restate that again. The whole idea behind the PLCs is that they're living, breathing entities. They're flexible, and it's like you said, Kayla. You don't have to start with one cohort of people that you're working with for the entire school year or far into the future. Like you said, it's important to keep recruiting and keep expanding because people do leave, and it's also important to be flexible with your goals and just make sure you're working towards both realistic and still relevant goals.
Yeah. And I know one PLC leader in particular shifted, a couple completely shifted their focus, and some of them it was from maybe talking about the kits to completely shifting to engaging the community. I know that's something that Nikki Dixon already spoke to, where maybe they saw a need to raise awareness in the community and kind of grabbed hold of that, and that was something that was important for the PLC participants as well. So I want to go back to, okay. So again, has anyone in the group had to shift what they originally stated as their PLC and change it to something new, and kind of how did you decide to do that? So one person I know did that is Joanne. Joanne, I don't know if you can go ahead and speak and talk to us about how you kind of shifted the focus of your PLC. All right, well, what I will say is I know that she recruited a lot of her teachers to make their materials systems and how they were sharing kits more beneficial, more strategic, and streamlined. And I know that that was a really big help for her in her school and maintaining those materials. So I'm going to give it a couple more minutes. I'm just going to start calling on people. Joanne, there we go. Can you speak now? No. That's okay, Joanne. Can't hear you. But I know that you changed your PLC. I think I gave it just as my description of what you guys ended up doing. Anyone else? Okay.
Kayla, we did have one response in the questions box.
Sure. Can you go ahead and read it, Kyle? My questions box has disappeared.
Sure. So Laura in New Mexico said that they talk a lot about notebooking, which they didn't necessarily plan on, but they were trying to see how it could work better for first grade students so that those students were not as frustrated with writing, which I think is great. It's adapting to the need.
I think, yeah, that's great. And let me, Laura. Great. So you want to go to the next slide? So we also, in the survey, had a couple of questions that I know were kind of repeat questions for several people had them, or things that I know that we have resources for that we wanted to address in this webinar. And the first was, how can I get my PLC participants more involved in the PLC so it's not just me presenting to them? And that's something that we were wanting to do through this webinar, kind of show that, yes, for the first however many webinars we've held, it's been either us or experts in the field presenting to you, and sometimes it can be difficult to elicit feedback or try to get participation, and that's something that I know that we addressed in the November webinar, the Becoming an Increasingly Effective Collaborative Team, and I know that was with Rob Reese, and something that I am sure he would say if you asked him that question is to really highlight and try to foster a sense of shared leadership in the PLC and accountability amongst each other. So he would say that it may be important that the PLC leader is not so obvious. So everybody's contributing, and everybody is held accountable for contributing something. He says it a lot better. It has some really helpful activities that he went through with us during the webinar that I know that you can take back to your PLC and kind of demonstrate the need for that shared leadership and collaboration. So I would encourage you to refer back to that webinar and pull out some of those tools. You can either view the webinar itself or just the PowerPoint is also available on the website. So you wouldn't have to sit and watch the entire thing. You can pull out the PowerPoint. And something else that Elizabeth talked about in the very beginning was creating these resources and how teachers really liked to get together and work collaboratively and create something that was going to be valuable for everybody in the group. So these assessments that they're going to be using that everyone found value in and was able to contribute to is a way to get participants more involved, and it's not, instead of it feeling like you're just kind of presenting some information. And I would love to hear if anyone else has suggestions from for that. Another question was, what free technology do you use to collaborate? And I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but I will say we had a webinar on collaborative technology to use. So online tools for professional learning community collaboration was in October. So I realize it's March, so it's been a while since we did that webinar. But again, I would encourage you to go ahead and dig that up. It's on our website, and go through the different free technologies that you can use, and whether it's helping to increase attendance for people who maybe can't come and sit face-to-face, or if it's something that you want people to contribute to outside of the actual PLC time. Obviously, Google Docs are great for that, and Google Community. But there are some other ones that Jamie Linton highlighted in that webinar that I know some people have been using and have found a lot of success with. If Gina were on this webinar, I would ask her to talk about the different things that she uses. I know Nikki, that she uses, actually Nikki, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you and talk about the tool that you use with your PLC group, because I know that it's been really helpful for you. So you are now unmuted.
We use a lot of the Google Docs when we can't meet face-to-face, because as everyone already knows, once the school year begins, we're pulled this way and that way. So a lot of my technologies had truly been just using like Google Docs or creating documents for or surveys for my teachers to fill out using Google Docs and the Drive. So that's mainly my professional tool, technology tool that I've been using.
That's great, and I know that a lot of the PLCs use Google Docs, and it's been really helpful. Elizabeth, do you have something else?
I just wanted to add to what Nikki said. We use it too for our PLC, and especially when you're creating documents, you can sit there and like someone that's working maybe on the same, like when we're creating assessments, someone that's working across from you, like you're able to discuss face to face, but you're also able to work on the same document at the same time. So it's really nice because you can do it when you're not face-to-face, and you can really do it, too, when you're face-to-face. So it's an awesome tool that I would definitely consider checking out if you're leading a PLC, or especially when you have teachers that are participating and they're miles away. Such a neat tool to use.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And Nikki, did you have something else?
Yes, at the very beginning, I created like on a flip chart, and I created it to introduce my PLC to, I guess, to the public, because I emailed it out to all of the teachers, and through it, I guess it's just like with the webinar, I was able to go through and highlight, and even though they were looking at each slide, I was talking, I had recorded my voice, so that I could explain in detail what my PLC would be about. And that was pretty helpful for me because, again, at the beginning of the school year, we're so busy. So that was my main source of recruitment, using the flip chart.
That's great, and I've seen that flip chart, and it was fantastic, and I can see how it has been a really great tool for recruitment, so that it was very clear what people would be doing in the PLC. So that's great. Thank you. So before we go to the next other ideas for meetings, I want to go back to, I'm going to try to unmute you, Molly, because I kind of want to talk about, I want you to talk through how your PLC meetings changed, because I think it's a really valuable one. So you are unmuted, so try to.
Sure.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, my daughter's awake now. So I went from planning on hosting monthly PLC meetings after school to just teaching the lessons for the teachers to their classes, so that they could observe how different ways of using the notebooks. And I found that was most helpful for them because, well, one, I was having real trouble with attendance at the after-school meetings, and I felt I had real positive feedback by just directly teaching straight to their classes. It felt like they were, the feedback they gave me was that they, one, they were grateful that they could see how another teacher might lead a lesson, but they didn't have to take extra time out of their day to attend a meeting.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, I'm going to go ahead and mute you because it sounds like your little daughter is needs you. So we also, it sounds like you've kind of incorporated all the different things that we've talked about. So issues with recruitment, finding out, changing your PLC to make sure that it was valuable to your participants, and adding that value, something that would be useful for them to encourage participation. So that's a great way to kind of highlight all the different things that we've talked about. So we're in the spring, so I'm sure that everybody is swamped and getting a little rundown ready for gearing up for testing and all these other things that happen in the spring. So I wanted to pitch a couple of ideas if you need them for your last couple webinars or PLC meetings. The first is you all know that you have to attend the PLC Leader webinars that we host, but we also have a completely separate series, and that is our Laser I3 Teacher webinar series. And again, all of those webinars are archived on our website, so something that some PLCs have done, and I think would be a great thing to do at the end of the year or whenever, is to view some of these webinars and discuss them, because all the tools are available to you, the PowerPoint, the video. I know that that's something that has been really helpful for some people to use. Another thing that I would really personally love to see is if PLC leaders would organize a virtual PLC with another region. And I think that would be really valuable to kind of hear what other people are doing in New Mexico, Houston, North Carolina, somewhere different than you, and bounce ideas off one another and either share the resources you've developed or share some resources together. I think there are a lot of different ways that that would be useful. And a way to connect with your other PLC leaders in this project is through our Google community. So I'm going to throw another pitch for our Google community for you to join that. All the resources that are available on there, and then you're able to connect with each other through that community. So those are my two suggestions. Does anyone else have suggestions for meetings, things that you can do in the spring? Let me give it just a couple more minutes. Lakeisha, I'm going to unmute you. I'm going to make sure you meant to do that. Lakeisha, are you there? Lakeisha?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I just wanted to say one thing that I'm going to do in my next PLC meeting is I'm going to have a survey to really see how helpful I was to the teachers during the PLCs, because when they do come, they seem to really enjoy it, and they ask a lot of questions, and we do a lot together because I'm the only science person on my campus. I don't have a lower grade teacher. So they really, whenever they have time with me, the lower grade teachers really appreciate it. So something that I'm going to do is I'm going to do a survey to see how beneficial it was, what was most helpful, what do they still need more help on, and how do they want to take our PLC going into the next school year.
That's great. And I would encourage you to use the Google surveys, of course, because they're really, really easy to use, free, and I'd love to hear about your experience with using that. We have another suggestion from Julie. Julie, you are unmuted.
We've asked everybody, of course, we have all grade levels to K-8, so we've asked that for our next meeting, everybody bring in their best EOG review games or whatever they do to review for EOG, because it kind of gets monotonous when it's coming down to the spring and everybody's trying to get ready for EOG and you don't want to just do the same things. So everybody's trying to kind of come up with some type of game, and we're going to kind of have a teacher share where we all kind of share out some different games and things that we can do to review during those enrichment times.
Great. And I would be, again, interested to kind of hear how that goes and what resources you've, and games and other things you come up with, because I'm sure other schools in North Carolina or in your district would be interested in hearing about this. That's something you can share on your on the Google community. That would be great. Anybody else? Suggestions for spring meetings now that it's starting to wind down a little? Okay.
Unmuted.
So I appreciate everyone offering their experiences and their successes. I know that this webinar was a lot different than ones that we've held in the past, and that was intentional. Like I said in the beginning, we're kind of trying to practice what we preach and being a collaborative team and learning from one another. So again, I really hope that this has been helpful, and I'm going to give it a couple of minutes for you to submit questions. Any questions that you have either about this webinar or anything else, you can go ahead and submit in the question box. Like I said, I would encourage everyone to, again, join the Google community and let me know if you have a meeting with someone who's a PLC leader in another region. I'd really like to hear about that, and if it's something that I can join, I would really love to do that as well. If you use Google Hangouts or Skype or have any questions about using those tools to do that, I am here as a resource for that. Any questions? I'm going to give it 2 more minutes, and you will have a survey at the end that also will have an opportunity if there's anything that we didn't address and maybe you thought of. Go ahead and complete that survey. We would appreciate that, and submit your question through that, and we will make sure that it is also answered.
So while we're waiting for any questions to come in, I want to echo what you said, Kayla. As you all saw, this is very different than what we've done in the past, and I also want to express my appreciation for your participation here this evening. And with the survey at the end, this is, like we said, very different than what we've done in the past, so we especially appreciate your feedback there. And if there's anything that you think of later, or anything that goes unanswered, like Kayla said, the PLC Leaders Google community page is a perfect place to continue the conversation, and it's I think, superior than just having a conversation with us by email, because then all your other colleagues can contribute their perspectives.
So, Michael, I'm going to go ahead and read this out loud because I think that it's a really good way to close this out. And what Michael said is, I'm glad to see everyone is having similar issues with me. And of course, it's been, I think the themes that we've covered have been in all 3 of the regions, and we have 23 PLCs. Everyone is kind of experiencing. So I'm really glad that we were able to hear from each other, and let's continue this on the Google community. And I don't see any other questions, so Kyle, I think we're good to sign off. Okay.
So thank you, Kayla. Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed having this conversation, hearing from you. Again, if you're able, could you please fill out the survey? That should pop up automatically. If it does not, there will be a link to it in a follow-up email sent by GoToWebinar 24 hours from now, tomorrow evening. So again, thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.